As you're reading through the Gospels, one of the things that you pick up on right away is that Jesus doesn't stay in one place. He's constantly on the move. It's almost as if you need a GPS to keep up with him. He's born in Bethlehem. Pretty soon he ends up in Egypt when his family flees from Herod, and then he retraces the path of the Israelites as they left Egypt and worked their way to the Holy Land. When Jesus begins his ministry, he's always on the move, going from city to city, preaching in synagogues, doing healings and miracles in every place from cities to the wilderness. In Luke chapter 4, for instance, right after the temptation account, he goes to his hometown of Capernaum, to his hometown of Nazareth, rather, and then he moves from there to the city of Capernaum. And in the city of Capernaum, he goes from the synagogue to the home of Simon Peter, and then from the home of Simon Peter, he moves out into a deserted place where the people beg him to stay there among them. But he says, no, I can't stay here because I have been sent to proclaim the kingdom of God in all the cities of Israel. So Jesus himself testifies to the fact that he has to be on the move. This is the reason for which the Father sent him, to move from place to place, proclaim the kingdom of God. Now, to understand fully exactly why Jesus was constantly on the move, proclaiming the kingdom of God in all these various places, we actually have to go all the way back to the book of Genesis, to chapter 13 of Genesis, and to understand what God said to Abraham in order to understand exactly why, the full reason why Jesus is on the move. So if you go back to Genesis 13, you read about Abraham. God says to Abraham that I want you to look to the north, the south, the east, and the west. Look every direction. And this is the land that I am giving to you. And what Abraham was to do is he was actually to traverse the Holy Land, to walk around the Holy Land, which he did. You can read about all his journeys in the book of Genesis. He was moving from place to place. And this actually reflected an ancient custom that is attested in Egyptian cultures and Hittite cultures, in the Nuzi culture, where ownership of the land was confirmed and affirmed by actually walking on the land, by pressing your feet upon the land. You were claiming ownership of it. It was as if you wrote your name on the land that you owned with the signature of your feet. So Abraham was to traverse the land that God was giving to him and to his descendants. So actually walk on the land, and by that walking, as it were, in a ritual enactment, to claim ownership of it. Now, fast forward from the days of Abraham to the days of Jesus. What is Jesus doing? Well, Jesus is Yahweh in the flesh. He is the Son of God, the Word made flesh. And so God has come in the person of Jesus in order to proclaim the kingdom of God, but also to proclaim that kingdom from place to place, to claim ownership of these places for the kingdom. See, the kingdom of God is a spiritual kingdom, but it's the kingdom that's rooted in the physical, in land itself. So Jesus comes. He walks all over the Holy Land, always on the move, proclaiming the kingdom of God. And as he does, he claims that kingdom in certain places, so that wherever he's preaching or wherever he sends preachers, that place is claimed for God. This physical place is where God is establishing his kingdom to gather his people to him and to give them forgiveness and life and salvation in his Son. So to understand why Jesus is constantly on the move, you go back to Genesis. You understand the story of Abraham within that cultural context. That land was claimed by pressing one's signature, as it were, with the soles of one's feet upon that soil. So Jesus, as he walks from place to place, proclaiming the kingdom of God, is proclaiming those places as his own. And this still happens. Any place the gospel is proclaimed, the feet of those preachers are beautiful because they bring good news. Those feet, where they stand, where the gospel is proclaimed, those feet are claiming this place as God's own. This is where God works. This is where God gives his gifts. This is where his kingdom is established. So Genesis helps us to understand the Gospels, and the Gospels help us to understand Genesis, and all of this together helps us to understand the importance of how God uses feet to claim his kingdom in all the places where the gospel is proclaimed. And I hope this helps us to understand a little bit more about the Gospels, especially Luke chapter 4, and why Jesus must go from place to place proclaiming the kingdom of God. Thanks for listening.